So, I'd like to introduce something that I'm going to introduce it to you now, and then when we get to it in Revelation chapter 14, it won't be the first time you've seen it, okay? And what I want to try to do is answer a question about the Sabbath. And then we want to jump back into our study of Revelation chapter 14. Notice in Revelation chapter 14 what it says in verses 9 to 11. We have somebody to read that, please. Revelation 14, 9 to 11.
And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark on his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels, and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name.
Revelation 14, verses 9 to 11, there's two groups given to us here at the end of time. And this group, this is bad, right? The people who receive the mark of the beast, okay? I before E,
Except after C.
except after C.
Except sometimes.
Before B.
People who receive the mark of the beast, okay? All right. So, we don't want to be a part of this group, do we? I don't even like hearing the verses. Do you like hearing those verses, Don? I don't like hearing them, do you?
Well, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. So, notice the other group in contrast. Okay? What does verse 12 say?
Here is the patience of the saints, and here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus.
People who do not, right, receive the mark of the beast. We got two groups. That's all there is.
Very
And the
small
mark of the
group.
beast is not out yet, right?
It is.
Oh, it is out.
Yeah. It's just not implemented yet. Okay? We'll get to what the mark of the beast is.
Can the mark also be a sign?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, we can show that from the New Testament too. You notice there's two groups, right? So the Bible is contrasting one group versus the other group. And this is the group we want to be a part of. We don't want to be a part of this group, right? Okay. So, let's focus on, give me the characteristics of this group here that we want to be a part of. These people here. What are their
Keeps
characteristics?
the commandments going,
Sabbath
has the
keeping.
testimony.
And has the faith of Jesus, yeah.
So, keep the Ten Commandments. Now tell me if I'm overstepping anywhere, okay?
Sabbath
keep-
keepers.
And
Have the faith of Jesus.
faith of, in some of your translations, and you can translate it either way, in.
Right.
Right? You can do it either way.
You will.
So-
Is the Ten Commandments, are you saying that that's the testimony?
No, I'm just going with what the verse says.
Okay.
There's
Yeah,
no,
the verse says faith.
yeah. He doesn't say testimony in verse 12.
Okay.
It
Yeah,
says,
it just says keep the
it
commandments.
says
of
keep
God.
the commandments of God. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So,
And faith is trust and belief and trust.
The faith that he had or faith in him.
So I make this statement, and I know a lot of people who aren't believing in Seventh-day Sabbath don't want to go along with that. Excuse me just for a second. Let me grab a bottle of water.
You got it.
What's the password? Oh, thank you.
You have Zoom going? Yeah. Yeah, I've got it going. Okay, I'm back.
Next time, just tell me to get it.
I should have gone and got a brush. Okay, does anybody have a problem with what I've got up there right now?
No.
Okay. So the people who do not receive the mark of the beast, this is the characteristics, right? There's 11 of them. Okay? You got the 10 commandments. So instead of me writing them all out, right? I'll do them like this.
You're going to show all of us your Roman numeral skills?
I think I am, hopefully. And then we have 9 and 10, right? So, 10 commandments, and then number 11 is the faith of Jesus. So there are 11 characteristics, right? What do these 11 characteristics have to do with the mark of the beast?
Would the mark of the beast be people who don't do any of those 11 things, or one of those 11 things?
Okay, let's go to Revelation chapter 13. What does it say if we read 16? Let's do 16 and 17.
He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name.
Okay, keep going.
Keep going. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of the man. His number is 666.
All right, so what I want to do, I want to include verse 15 in there.
He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed.
All right, I should have started there in verse 15.
Is this
That's
where
saying
that
that everyone, except for the people that worship the beast, are going to be killed. Does that mean that every single Sabbath-keeping Christian is going to be killed?
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. I want you to see there are 3 verbs associated with the mark of the beast. Okay? These are the 3 verbs associated with the mark of the beast. Okay?
and is this where it comes back to that word from the Catholic Church where he multiplied out and becomes 666?
Verse 18. Yeah, that's why I stopped there. You know, I should have started 15 to 17 instead of 16 to 18. So, we have 3 verbs that deals with the mark of the beast. We have 11 things over here that are characteristic of the people who don't receive the mark of the beast. Okay? Which one of these 11 deals with worship, buying, and selling?
The first 4?
All right? Is it number 1, don't have any other gods before me, deals with worship, not buying and selling, right?
So it's got to be the 4.
Yeah, if you went down the list, the only one that deals with worship, buying, and selling is the 4th one. It's the only one.
Well, the
So-
meaning does it all 3.
Do you see how the mark of the beast is an attack on this commandment?
What does that say?
Right? It's an attack on that commandment.
Says it's an evil thing.
But isn't it an attack on all, like, on a lot of the commandments as well?
It specifically is an attack on the 4th commandment because it's the only one that deals with worship, buying, and selling. Okay? Let's prove it's the only one that deals with worship, buying, and selling. Right? So, if you read the 4th commandment, it tells you who to worship in the 4th commandment. Right? Your Creator. So it's easy to do the worship part. We just go to Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 to 11, and we see it tells us who to worship, our Creator. Okay? So that's pretty straightforward. What about the buying and selling part? Notice, we're going to go over here now for these 2. Let's go to Nehemiah chapter 13. We're going to do 15 to 17. It's similar here. You know, the only difference is we're just taking the Rev out and put the Nia. Right? How do you remember it? It's similar. Revelation 13, 15 to 17. You go to Nehemiah 13, 15 to 17. I need somebody to read that with a preaching voice.
15. In those days, I saw people in Judah treading wine presses on the Sabbath, and bringing in sheaves and loading donkeys with wine, grapes, figs, and all kinds of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I warned them about the day on which they were selling provisions. Men of Tyre dwelt there also, who brought in fish and all kinds of goods, and sold them on the Sabbath to the children of Judah and in Jerusalem.
Okay, you go to verse 17?
Then I contended with the nobles of Judah, and said to them, what evil thing is this that you do, by which you profane the Sabbath day?
What did they do that was so evil?
Buying and selling.
Buying, selling.
Buying and selling a what?
And
Sabbath.
Do you notice how Nehemiah calls buying and selling on the Sabbath evil? Right? So when we talk about the Sabbath,
It concerns buying.
and we say it's important that we're not buying and selling on the Sabbath today, like going to restaurants on Sabbath morning, right?
They're going to the grocery store even.
Right. Well, why is it important? Because if you understand what the mark of the beast is, and what it specifically is attacking, right? Then you understand that if you're buying and selling now on the Sabbath, you're going to give in to the mark of the beast when it's implemented. You see that? Does that make sense, Thomas?
What if your ox is in the ditch on the Sabbath and you need
You're
to
saying
get something to get it out?
proverbial ditch, right?
Yes, but what if you need to buy something to get it out of the ditch?
Well, it's like if your child is sick and you need something, you can go to the store and
Yeah,
buy
and
that.
you need to have cough
That's
syrup.
necessary, yeah. That's
Yeah,
necessary.
because they got,
I'm just bringing up that there should be exceptions to that.
they do some things on the Sabbath.
That's like the ox in the ditch, you can pull it out.
If your ox is in the ditch, you should be, or is it not lawful to do good on the Sabbath?
You know,
Is it not
Jesus talked
good?
about that to the Pharisees.
Is it not lawful to do good on the
Michael, help us
Sabbath?
out.
Didn't, when he's talking about the ox in the ditch, didn't Jesus, or someone around there,
Come back, gas, reveal.
kind of explain it that some of the laws that the Jews had set up had made the Sabbath unkeepable, almost unkeepable?
Is it a sin to do good on the Sabbath?
Yeah. I mean,
Lots got stuck in the ditch because he's trying to sell.
So, you're bringing up some good points here. The principle here is they were buying and selling what on the Sabbath in Nehemiah 13?
Fish and other things.
Wine.
Wine.
They were, so what's the general term we call that?
Commerce.
Food,
Yeah.
right? The Bible says right here that it's a sin or evil, it uses a very strong word, to buy and sell food on the Sabbath, right? Now, it's a different situation if you had a homeless person come up and say, I hadn't eaten in a while, and you need to feed them. Well, you go to your pantry. And if you didn't happen to have anything in your pantry, an extreme case would be you go to the store and relieve their suffering right then.
Mm-hmm.
The principle there in doing good on the Sabbath is you're relieving suffering, right?
It's like the
On the
medical
Sabbath.
field.
What day
Medical
did
for the
David
doctors and the
eat the
nurses.
showbread?
I don't know, but he, Jesus said that he, it's only for the priest to eat the showbread, and he was saying that David went and ate the showbread.
Who got the corn? Who went in the fields and got the corn to eat?
No, that was Jesus and his disciples. If you're hungry on the Sabbath, it's all right to go.
So you're
into the
bringing up
field
Matthew
and
chapter 12 right now, right?
Go into
Go
the
ahead.
field and get some wheat to satisfy your hunger, is what he said.
Yeah, so they're walking through the grain fields, and the disciples are doing this and popping some of the grain and chewing on it as they're walking through there. And the Pharisees or the Sadducees, one group or maybe both, were saying, "Hey, look at this! They're harvesting on the Sabbath. They're breaking the Sabbath." And then that's when Jesus is trying to teach them. Walking through a grain field. It's like if we walk through an apple orchard and picked an apple and started eating it on the Sabbath, it's not a sin to do that. There's a difference between them walking through the grain field, getting a snack as they're walking along, and harvesting grain so they can go out and sell it. I mean, it's a different situation. They're not buying and selling the food. They're just walking through the grain field. Right?
How about the people in the wilderness when they got the manna on the Sabbath day?
No, they didn't. get it. They did a
They
double
got
portion
twice
on
it on the Friday.
Some-
Exodus
some-
chapter
some
16.
did, but weren't
Right,
it?
right. So in Exodus 16, it's 4 chapters before the 10 Commandments is given in Mount Sinai, which is a good example to show the Sabbath has always been there. It says in Exodus 16, the manna came down each day. You're supposed to only get enough for that day. But on preparation day, which is we call it Friday, you're supposed to go out and get twice as much.
So, and it shall be on the 6th day that they shall prepare what they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily.
So, some of the people did exactly like God said, and it was great. It worked out perfect. Some people, they would go out on Tuesday, and they would get more than enough to satisfy them for Tuesday, and they tried to keep it overnight, and there was worms in it the next day, right? But on the 6th day, some people, they followed what Moses said, which came from God. They went out and got twice as much, and the next day on the Sabbath, it was great. It was perfect. It was just like it was brand new, right? So it was a miracle that happened. Some people went out to gather manna on the 6th day, and that was bad news. And God said in the
You mean
text,
seventh day?
There was none on the
Seventh
7th day.
that they went out to gather, and God is like, you know, use this to test you. Use the Sabbath to test the people to see if their hearts were right with God. He already knew, but they didn't know.
Pastor, it probably didn't even rain manna on the 7th day.
It didn't rain manna on the
But it was
7th
not
day.
there for them to get.
But you notice how they went out there,
Right,
some did,
right.
to gather manna on the
You
7th.
know?
What did you read what it says about them there? Or-
Didn't Jesus do the same thing? They're picking food and the disciples picking food on the Sabbath day.
Yeah, but they just picked food as they were walking through a grain field.
Because the people, actually picked what they wanted to eat as they went through it on the
Well,
Sabbath day.
they specifically disobeyed God. Notice, it says, Exodus chapter 16, it says in verse 23, this is what the Lord has said, tomorrow is a Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake today, boil what you will boil, lay up for yourselves that all that remains to be kept until the morning. So they laid it up till the morning as Moses commanded. It did not stink, nor were there any worms in it. Then Moses said, eat that today, for today is the Sabbath of the Lord. Today you will not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will be none. Now it happened that some of the people, this starting in verse 27, went out on the 7th day to gather, but they found none. And the Lord said to Moses, how long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore he gives you on the 6th day bread for 2 days. Let every man remain in his place. Let no one go out of his place on the 7th day. And so God was using it to test the people. Here's the thing. Here's the principle. Before they came to the promised land, God used the Sabbath to test the people. Right? To see whose heart was truly loyal to God or not. Okay? It's the same with us. We are also in the wilderness. We're also waiting for the true promised land. We're also on the edge of the true promised land, right? And the Sabbath is going to be used again at the end of time as a test before the second coming of Christ. And the people who are truly following God with all their hearts won't receive the mark of the beast, right? They'll keep the Sabbath day like God commands us in the Bible. And the people who aren't holy, right, seeking after God, they're going to buy into this idea. That's why it's in the hand or the forehead, right? The hand is, you go along with it, but you don't necessarily believe it, right? The forehead is you believe it. So you have two groups of people who receive the mark of the beast. But the Bible teaches us that buying and selling on the Sabbath just for your own convenience. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about relieving somebody's suffering. Sister?
Could you expand on the Exodus 23 verse where it talks about bake and boil? How does that apply to then and now that we use our appliances to
Yeah, okay. So what is the principle here? The principle is, it is this commandment that says don't work on the Sabbath, right? It should be the easiest one to keep. Why do we make it so difficult and so hard? So the principle is that we're supposed to be focused on our relationship with God and our relationship with each other. What did Jesus do on the Sabbath? Luke chapter 4, verse 16, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day, as was his custom, right? And he stood up to read. So the focus there was worshiping with like believers, using the scripture as the center of your worship, because that's what tells us about God, right? And not spending time working for like you do the other 6 days of the week. Thomas?
For me, my interpretation, when I think about what I'm going to do to keep the Sabbath, it's more the Sabbath was made for our enjoyment, not to be something that is an inconvenience. It's supposed to be like, say that your job is to go out and you have a field that you bring in the food, to feed your family, and then you sell the remaining to buy more crops the next year. And you're just supposed to not do that on the Sabbath. If you forgot to bring in food the previous day, and you go out and you get some of your wheat to make bread, it's better if you hadn't done that, if you'd gotten it on Friday, but it's more about, you're not supposed to be doing what you normally do for work on Sabbath. You're just supposed to be resting and remembering. It's not anything about, it's not supposed to be something that's inconveniencing you. It's supposed to be something that you use as a blessing.
Yeah, that's true. Remember, it's the only commandment that starts with that word. Remember, right? And it's the one that most professed Christians don't remember, which is interesting to me because the word remember there in the Hebrew means it's a memorial of his creative act. Judy?
Well, I use Friday as preparation day and do prepare all of my food. At the time that these people had to go out and actually gather wood and build a fire and
That's
everything.
the key.
And then they
Right.
actually had to prep all the food. I do all the prep on Friday. So yes, I do warm things up and heat them up on Sabbath, but I'm not actually cooking.
Right.
I'm warming them
right,
up.
Right.
I'm
exactly.
not, but I didn't have to go build a fire either. I just turned it off.
And that's the key there. You're minimizing the time. You're not having this
Right.
burden of cooking on the Sabbath, right? You're heating the food up, brother.
So help me understand the difference between cooking and warming.
Yes.
Because we tend to come here and warm up food for the,
Fellowship.
potluck.
Right.
You're using the same equipment. You're using those poor Gentiles out there working in electrical plants and everything else to provide for you to do these things. So I just need help understanding. It's like there are, one of the arguments could have been from the Pharisees, and they're wandering through the fields and doing that wheat. Was it their wheat? Or were they actually stealing somebody else's wheat to eat that?
Well, the Old Testament made provision for you wasn't supposed to glean the
I
full
understand.
field.
Yeah. I'm just saying, looking at it from other people's, because I come from a background, of course, that we've kept the holy day Sunday.
Yeah,
So
Lord's
for
Day,
me,
right?
it's been kind of a journey learning some of these things because
Yeah, absolutely.
again, I have a real problem. I'm a guy that ended up having to, I had a lot of employees that worked on Saturdays and stuff, and I checked for them and things like that. So I'm still having a struggle why it would be a sin to help somebody that's working there. You go to a restaurant, you buy, and then usually if we're there, we're testifying about Jesus, or I write a note on the thing about Jesus. So now I'm going back to Jesus in the tax collector's house, when it feels a little bit like straining on a net and swallowing a camel.
Well, that's why I think the Sabbath.
It's okay if there's a homeless guy sitting outside my house and I don't have any food for him, for me to go buy it for him.
Yeah, but he's not working in a restaurant, to make a living.
So we're not
right.
supposed to benefit sinners, we just go feed them, is that it? I'm just
Yeah, absolutely. You could definitely benefit sinners on the Sabbath if you want to be able to do that by feeding a homeless person,
But
but
not benefit them by helping them.
they're not supposed to be
with
working
the
on the
income
Sabbath.
that they should,
Right.
feed their children.
And that,
No one is supposed to work on
isn't
Sabbath.
that the key though, is we're not supposed to be working on the Sabbath. In other words, in the job that you do to be able to generate money for your income, that's what it's talking about. Notice what it says in Isaiah chapter 58.
Well, no, let's stop there, because I agree, that's not what I'm doing, I'm helping somebody else.
Yeah, but that's what they're doing. You're encouraging them to break the Sabbath by going to a restaurant.
But again, we've then drawn lines and said, well, if you're a cop or you're a...
That's why I started with this. Do you see the principle
No,
of
I
it?
understand, I see where that's
Yeah,
going.
if you go down this road of buying and selling on the Sabbath, you're gonna give in when the mark of the beast is
That's
passed.
right.
It's setting you up for failure is what I'm saying.
I think because, again, this is new to us, you know. we
Yeah,
just,
absolutely.
A few months ago, whatever, stopped eating pork, stopped the shellfish and all of that.
Right,
Which I
right.
miss desperately. But I would say if indeed we're trying to encourage, and that's, you know, Tom's very, very, and he is my pastor at home, if you will. He's my
Absolutely.
vicar.
He's the spiritual leader of the
So
house.
we stopped at the pork, we stopped at the shellfish, and now it's like, okay, nothing else. It's like, I really need this headache medicine, Tom, you know, at the store. So could we just do that on the way home? No, we can't. Because it would be nice not to have to get dressed up and go out on Sunday. No, we can't do that. We'll get dressed up and go out on Sunday. I'll do it, darling. You stay in bed. I'll go get it for you.
Yeah.
So it's like, he's very, very strict about everything else, but I adore going to the restaurant, you know, so a part of his thing is that, you know, I enjoy that. But I do have to say, if we indeed were managing to get the world to stop working on Saturday, it indeed, the way the world is now, it would drop dead. We wouldn't be able to use the microwave to warm up any food. We'd all be, you know, eating radishes, which I guess is good. Is that where we're going?
You know, plant-based
We
diet.
would be back to, you know, just whatever we managed to. get
Okay,
to
so
move
this is
outside.
one of the principles, right? Relieving suffering. If you had a horrible headache, you know, that it's sometimes it gets
Yeah, no,
excruciating.
and it wasn't. He would have if it was.
Yeah,
for
you
that.
go to
You
the
could
store
tell
and
that
buy
it was
it.
just-
Exactly.
It was
So,
more about getting dressed again on Sunday.
So again, I'm still having problems with, maybe I'm relieving the suffering of a server in a restaurant. There's a single mother who's trying to raise children. I'm relieving the suffering by giving her a good tip. Barbara used to, when I met her, she was running a big restaurant and stuff. And one of the worst customers in the world are church people because they never tip. They always stay like 3 or 4 hours at a table, you know, and all that. We don't do any of that. We over-tip.
that's
you know,
good. Amen. Amen.
So I'm really, because every time I get a rule, then there's always an exception. There's always somebody that's come up, and I've been online, I've read all the Adventist stuff and everything else, and they come up with some really weird, okay things to do. But, you know.
Yeah.
And
Isn't it interesting? We don't have a list of do's and don'ts when it comes to the Sabbath, except for don't work, don't buy and sell food. I mean, those are the two don'ts that are there in the scriptures. And we have Isaiah 58 and verse 13. We'll read that too. We got a couple of comments here. We'll see what they say.
Okay, what I was gonna say is everything that he does sounds wonderful, and you can do that 6 days a week,
Right.
you know, but putting the Sabbath separate and keeping that just for the Lord is specific to the Bible, specific to a request of the Lord. And Satan will do everything he can to convince you that you're wrong. And I know
Yeah.
many people are still struggling. When I first came to the Adventist church, I struggled with it.
Right.
So I understand totally.
Yeah, I do too, because I did grow up as an Adventist.
Pastor, the big thing here is preparation day. Preparation day, you should look forward and anticipate
Right.
needs and desires and everything and fill it. Like, if you love ice cream or Little Debbie's, buy it on Friday.
There you go.
Don't go
Mark,
out
do you hear that?
on Saturday to buy it.
Buy the Little Debbie's on Friday.
But then you got the problem about eating it on the Sabbath.
That's not a problem.
No.
That's not right. Well, thank you.
Thomas.
I think that this relieving suffering, it's really easy for people to get after other people. But what happens if, in a theoretical situation, that you get a really, really bad clot in your heart? You need to have a heart transplant. on Sabbath. And if you
Right.
don't get an heart transplant within an hour, you're going to die. Are you going to get after the Seventh-day Adventist surgeon who's going to perform your heart transplant for working on Sabbath?
No.
Because you're going to die.
What's he doing?
He's relieving the suffering.
Right.
How about you have a thief breaks into your house and tries to steal a bunch of your stuff and threatens your child's life? Would you not want a police officer
Yeah,
to work on
yeah.
Sabbath and come in?
Yeah, that's.
Or how about you? You're working on Sabbath, aren't
No,
you?
I don't get paid to.
I know, but aren't you here?
Yeah, honestly, this is
aren't
this is
you-
the day
aren't you
off for
here
me.
performing
For
spiritual,
pastors, yeah.
spiritual surgery for all of us?
Yeah,
Isn't
I
that what
don't.
you're
I don't
doing?
get paid for preaching and teaching Sabbath school.
I know, I'm just.
Yeah.
Can you tie a scripture for relieving suffering to, it's okay to do that on the Sabbath?
Yeah, to relieve suffering.
Well, look at Jesus explained that by healing the people on Sabbath. He made the
Right.
Pharisees angry because he did it.
Yeah.
But he was proving the point that this is okay.
Isn't
Right.
that lawful
You
to do
remember-
good on the Sabbath?
Yeah,
Yeah, the man at the pool. How long had he been?
38.
38 years, right? And he relieves him. He told him to pick up his mat on the Sabbath. You know, and that was just like heresy.
So Jesus broke the Pharisees' law to do that,
Yeah, that
and
was
he
tradition.
initiated something new.
Yeah.
So when I go home on, we tend to go home and watch ABN 3. It is written, what's his face? Bassett.
Yeah, John
We got them
Bradshaw.
all, and we
Yeah.
watch those.
Yeah. Jack Baxter, John
And
Bradshaw.
we even read the Bible, but sometimes, because Barbara's in such bad shape, I make her take a nap. Well, now she's sleeping on the Sabbath and not reading the Bible or worshiping every minute. So, but I guess that's relieving suffering, so,
I think it's okay to rest.
yeah.
Right.
And I'm sorry to bring all this up. I just came from a background, there's so much hypocrisy and so much,
Yeah. So that's why the Sabbath isn't about rules and regulations.
There's a
The
fine line between worship, between observing the Sabbath and being a legalist.
Yeah, yeah. There, the purpose is relationship, right? It's relationship with God and relationship with fellow believers. That's the purpose of it, Mike.
So if you look at Jesus' life, and the things he did when he was alive, right? And what he did on the Sabbath, he did heal people on the Sabbath.
Right.
He kept the Sabbath holy.
Yeah.
I mean, he taught, he, as his custom, he went to the synagogue to read. But he also did things like when they gathered the wheat, the things that they needed to do. I mean, I think he kind of established the difference between, you know, didn't he also throw out the people from the buyers and sellers from the, wasn't that on the Sabbath?
Yeah.
In John chapter 2 is the story you're bringing up about he cleansed the temple. He did it twice. He did it at the beginning of the ministry and at the end of the ministry, which I think is interesting how he did it twice there. So
I didn't learn the lesson the first time, apparently.
look at the context of John chapter 2. They had the wedding. Then there's the Passover of the Jews in verse 13 of John chapter 2, right? And it doesn't say anything about that being the Sabbath day, I don't believe. Could you all look through there and see if it says it is? I don't think it was on the Sabbath, but I could be wrong. Could y'all scan
That story was more about keeping God's house holy more than
Right,
keeping the
right,
Sabbath
right.
holy.
And the Sabbath shouldn't be looked upon as something legalistic. There are principles in the Bible, but we don't have this big long list. And that's what the Pharisees and the Sadducees did, Tom. Right? The Pharisees came up with this big long list of do's and don'ts. Right? You can't walk so far. You can't carry this. You can't do that. You can't light a fire. You can't, you know what I mean? And that's not what it's about. Jesus said in Mark 2, 27 to 28, the Sabbath is made for man and not man for the Sabbath.
It's
And
made for our enjoyment.
Notice,
to be a rest day.
it is for that. We're supposed to enjoy God's presence on the Sabbath. Notice what it says in Isaiah, and I've mentioned this a couple of times.
It's supposed to be a day you look forward to, not a day you dread because you can't walk 3 feet on the Sabbath. It's supposed to be a day you're looking forward to.
So listen to how this chapter starts in Isaiah chapter 58. Cry aloud, spare not, lift up your voice like a trumpet. That's something I have a hard time doing today. Tell my people their transgression. Okay? And the whole context here, we'll look toward the end here, not the whole context, the partial context, it's the Sabbath. Notice what it says in verse 12 of that chapter. Those from among you shall build the old waste places. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to dwell in. What breach is it talking about?
Protected wall.
Yeah, he's talking about the breach in the moral law. That when you have the moral law is like a wall that protects us from Satan's attacks. All right? Notice verse 13. If you turn away, so you today, you're fulfilling verse 12. The repair of the breach, right? When you go out and share the truth about the Sabbath, you're trying to help people understand about this commandment that God has really highlighted as He puts it in the center of the Ten Commandments. It's kind of the heart of His, or the foundation of His whole law, is the Sabbath commandment. He goes on to say this: if you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your pleasure on my holy day, and if you look into the study about this, the Hebrew word there, transliterated as H-E-P-E-S, and it means business. Okay? From doing your business on my holy day. Notice the Sabbath is not called the holy day of the Jews. It's called God's holy day. And called the Sabbath a delight, the holy day of the Lord, honorable. And so honor Him, not doing your own ways. And own ways means customary, the things you do the other 6 days of the week. Okay, so these are the principles He gives us here, right? Nor speaking your own words. In other words, we really shouldn't be coming to church and saying, "Oh, did you see the ball game last night?" Right? I've been guilty of doing that.
I'm guilty.
Yeah, we really should be focused on our relationship with God and encouraging one another. Right? That's really what it's about. Take a rest from the world. From the normal activities you do the other 6 days of the week, right? Now, are there certain circumstances that pop up when you are called upon to relieve suffering? I remember I was pastoring a small church in a place called Daisy, Tennessee. It's called the city's called Soddy Daisy.
Sorry, Daisy.
But if you go to the older residents before they came to Soddy Daisy and say Soddy Daisy, they'll correct you and say Daisy. Right? So, and they had a pipe bust, on the Sabbath, under the house. So what did I do on the Sabbath? I crawled under the house. They needed help that day and couldn't wait. I mean, it was one of those situations. That's the ox in the ditch, right? And so that, if you take consideration these principles the Bible gives us, because it's not about a list of do's and don'ts, okay? And we got to be careful about this. When I first became an Adventist, it was okay to go hiking and get in the water up to your ankles, but you can't go to your knees. That's what some people believe. Or it was okay to go to your knees, but you can't go to your waist. That's swimming on the Sabbath, and that's a sin. That type of thing is legalism. That's not what we're talking about here. You may be convicted that I shouldn't jump in there and swim around in the water, with all that activity. Okay, well, don't do it. Right? But the Bible doesn't have thou shalt not swim on the Sabbath in there. So I think we have to be careful that what I'm convicted about on the Sabbath isn't always what other people are convicted about. These are the principles. I think the buying and selling part is pretty straightforward in the Bible, right? I think, to me, that's black and white, but there's other things in there that's not black and white. And that's why I just try to see what is the principles and apply that in my own life, and not be judgmental towards somebody else. If I see a church member walking out, I'm driving by on the Sabbath, they're walking out of Walmart, right? What?
You jump out of the car and you have your.
Am I going to pull over and say, "What are you doing? Coming out of the store?" And this? No. Maybe they're doing this, right? Maybe they're buying some medical for somebody. You know?
You're not supposed to judge, and that's never right.
That's right. So Thomas
Our
first,
place.
And Sean's got something too.
and then we'll go to you, sister.
Yeah, I think it's really important that
Sean
idea.
did one too.
I think it's really important that idea that it's about what the Holy Spirit convinces you of. Like if let's say there is a church member that is really convicted and believes that it is really evil to go swimming on the Sabbath, right? Like we had an example of this. My mom was in this church meeting, and with all the discussion and the Bible and everything, they decided, okay, you know what? Maybe the ankles is not reasonable. And then she's like, all right, well, what about where's the new line now? Is there a new line?
Yeah,
Is this the line? Where's the line?
Right.
It's ridiculous, and at least that was her.
Ridiculous.
They were saying it was ridiculous, and I think that it's really about if you're convicted about something, the Holy Spirit will work on your heart. If you're not convicted of something, you probably should be. Like say there's a church member that thinks it's all right to go out to eat on Sabbath. They haven't been convicted about that yet. And maybe the Holy Spirit will work on them and will convict them in the future.
I
But
do
it's
have
not for you to judge. You are not the
Yeah,
Lord. You're not God. You don't have the judgment
Can't see
in your
that.
house. So it's about the Holy Spirit.
We're supposed to work out our.
But when there are certain things that are black and white about the Sabbath, I do bring those up, right? And buying and selling on the Sabbath is black and white in Nehemiah 13:15-17. Sean, I think I skipped over you.
Yeah, so one of the things that I struggle with, I'm fortunate, I don't have to work on the Sabbath, but, you know, I work for a chemical plant, and if it shuts down, it makes the news, and takes
Right.
6 weeks to get running again, and we've got operators there that are there 24/7.
Right.
And, you know,
Same with power plants, nuclear power plants,
and I think,
hospitals.
you know,
I mean, I think this is a principle, right? I mean, there's just certain things because we don't live in a perfect world, right? We have to cope.
Okay. So, I guess, you know, relief suffering, you know, we do make pharmaceuticals and medical plastics to go in medical devices. At the same time, we make cigarette filters. So, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's something that if you were an operator that learned the truth about the Sabbath, now you're used to working on Saturdays, well, you have to pray to God and say, okay,
Find a way out.
you have this principle here that Jesus gave us in Luke chapter 4 of attending church service. You know, can I alternate with somebody? Does it have to be every Sabbath? Or maybe you're convicted not to work at all on the Sabbath. You tell them that. You know, and I write letters to different companies for people who are convicted about the Sabbath, so they'll let them off on Sabbath. But I think part of that is how are you convicted?
Yeah, well, I was thinking, we have to be careful, especially as adults and parents, because like what he mentioned, you know, maybe as a family we have certain convictions about doing or not doing this, that have other children. You know, some families, I mean, at least me and Brandon and I, we are very strict. Like, there is a lot of don'ts, you cannot do a lot of these things. And it's because our parents were very convicted about those things. Like, to me, right now, they are irrelevant and make our Sabbath very not pleasant.
Right,
And
right.
very, like, in some ways, like, I hate Sabbath.
Yeah, they could make Sabbath a burden,
Yes,
right?
a burden.
We want to keep it holy, so we're going to make it a burden. And that's what the Pharisees did, right?
So in some ways, if it's our conviction as an adult, when it would be okay, or when it's like maybe the age, like we can pass those convictions, or maybe don't pass those convictions to our kids, you know what I mean?
Well, to me, it's not practical, and I don't think Jesus would have a child sit in this chair, you know, right? You have to sit in this chair and listen to this. Then you got to get up from this chair and go and sit in a pew, right? And can't be wiggling around, right? And so I think, you remember when Summer? Yeah, what did Summer do? I'd be up here preaching on the platform, and Summer go behind me, right? So the thing about it is, we do want to teach our children to be reverent in church, but we got to be practical about it. We don't want it to be a burden, right? We don't want it to be a burden.
God is alive.
It's about the Sabbath being something for our enjoyment. It's for our enjoyment. My
It is.
grandfather,
It really
when he was a child, he told me this story that when he was a kid, one of his favorite things to do was ride his bicycle, like just ride it around, but he wasn't allowed to do it on Sabbath. His mom would not let him. And so he hated the Sabbath, because that was his favorite thing to do, was ride his bicycle around. And his mom wouldn't let him ride his bicycle.
I think it's a great idea to ride your bicycle.
And that's what and for me, my childhood was so vastly different from that. It was about that, because when I grew up, it was like my dad didn't like us to be inside on our iPads or on the TV on Saturday. It was better to go outside, and so it was like the opposite experience for me. I wanted to be inside doing whatever on the computer, and my dad was like, "No, go outside. Today's a beautiful Sabbath day. You can go out there and jump on the trampoline or whatever it is." But anyway, it's about whatever you're going to do. It's enjoyable.
I would jump on a trampoline on the Sabbath. You know,
Pastor,
if I'm
it says
interacting with the
keep it-
kids, I think it's a great way to connect with
It
kids.
says make the Sabbath a delight.
Yeah,
It says.
right. So I think we have some principles that you could go through the scriptures and study yourself and develop your own list of principles and apply that in your life, right, Tom?
Yeah, and I really appreciate this, because folks, all this came about because of the question I asked him on Wednesday at lunch. And for me, and this is where I really struggle, is because this does feel like legalism. What you've done there, that has really helped me. Tying those two together has helped a lot. But, I mean, I saw my first movie at a movie theater after I was over 18 and in the Navy, because the church didn't allow movies.
Right.
It was sinful.
Was it sinful to watch Charlton Heston, Ten Commandments?
What's that?
Charlton Heston in the Ten Commandment movie, was it sinful to watch it?
Sorry, it's in a theater. You couldn't go to a restaurant because they served alcohol. So if you, in high school, if you had a date, all you could really do is go to a fast food, get a hamburger, go park. Because you couldn't do anything else.
Which is encouraging your worst behavior.
That for me is where all this legalism came from. I mean, when
Yeah.
became saved, roller skating was a sin. There was all these things that we did, and so that what this feels like right there, that all of a sudden I can do everything I can to worship Him on Sabbath. I go to lunch and I'm going to hell because I went to a restaurant. That's how it feels because of my background.
Yeah.
If I happen to lead a person while I'm in a restaurant to God, he won't really be saved because I did it on a Sabbath, at a restaurant. So those are the things that, and I am not convicted by the Holy Spirit. I'm only convicted because I'm trying to please this group that I now belong to and do these things, because I see all these inconsistencies. Like I said, you can't cook, but you can warm.
Right.
It drives me crazy with that stuff. So that's where I'm struggling with.
Well, I think it's interesting how you see it as an inconsistency, but Judy doesn't see it that way.
I understand.
And that's the principle that I think we should make clear is we don't have a big long list of do's and don'ts. We have a few. Don't work, don't buy and sell, right? Other than that, we have these principles given in the Bible about the Sabbath. And I think we've got to be careful about, we're not all going to look at it the same way. We come from different backgrounds, right? And guess what? We're all broken people. And we're going to definitely be merciful toward each other, right?
Well, in like relieving suffering, my wife has suffered for over 22 years with a failed triple fusion on her back. She's in constant pain. This woman, since we were married, beat cigarettes, she beat super alcohol, and she beat morphine. The doctors put her on morphine for 17, 18 years, and she took herself off.
Wow.
And the only thing that's left is the little Vicodin they give her. We're not able sometimes to sit all the way through church because her pain's so bad. What relieves her pain is when I take her to a restaurant, she gets some coffee that she doesn't drink any other time in the week. And after church, we can pull in that, because I can't take care of her all the time at home on this stuff. She works really hard that no one understands or knows that she is in pain or has a problem.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a benefit to my wife when I do that. I could care less. I grew up that, she couldn't believe when we traveled, I grew up, we carried a loaf of white bread and a bunch of hot dogs, and that's how you ate, you know. And she came from a little different level than I came from. So for me, it's a benefit. She has given me permission, just after you and I talked, she said, I'm taking that all the way. If you're convicted and you don't want to do it, then we'll never go out again. So I really admire the things she's done.
Amen.
She's
Amen.
like no one I've ever met.
Right.
And so for me, it's like this, you're telling me I can't do this one little thing that makes her happier, makes her feel better. And so that's what I'm dealing with. And,
Well,
and
I
I'm
want to
sorry
be
to do
clear.
this because up till now, until I met SDA, I did not understand that God was a God of love. I thought he was a God of punishment.
Yeah.
So
Now,
this is still pretty new.
This is still God of love, and the reason why it'd be great if we can do this, you know, without having to do that. But sometimes you can't, right? I mean, we recognize that. I think God understands that as well. We definitely, and that is the overarching principle of all of this: is God is love, right? And we always want to come across with that principle. If anything is said, Tom, or we come across in a way that it doesn't appear that we're exemplifying that God is love, then I think you got to say something, because always God is love. Even in destruction of the wicked, God is love, right?
Absolutely.
In everything he does. I think we have two over here. So Maurice and then Raymond.
If God hasn't fully made this clear to you and you understand your loving relationship, it can become a burden, like the Pharisees said.
Yeah, it can.
And
right.
I always understood that don't work was don't exert any effort or sweat on Sabbath, you know. Then they said, well, no, it's don't go to your business. You're not doing your commerce to support your livelihood on Sabbath. But then the buying and selling, I thought that was their commerce that it was talking about there, that's what they did. They were
That is their
conducting
commerce,
business.
Right.
Like, to me, you know, to take somebody up to enjoy a fellowship where you're not having to do food prep, you're just enjoying fellowship, I thought that was a benefit. And I've had pastors tell me that we've had this wrong all the time, that we're making Sabbath a burden by not being able to just enjoy a meal, that somebody who doesn't understand the Sabbath may put your blessing them with, you know, your finances, because that's what they have to do because they don't know any better. I guess it can be really confusing.
It can be.
And
It can be.
we can get all tied up in craziness that we
want to
lose the whole
minimize.
purpose of it if we don't be careful.
Yeah, you're right about that. So Raymond?
I find this way complex and at the same time very simple. For me personally, it's no one can work this out for me. Like, this is a relationship.
Right.
So I don't really care. Anybody in this room that has an opinion on it doesn't matter, because you're not saving me. So that's one comment. The other comment is, so I relieve suffering 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Right now, I should be working to relieve suffering, because it's endless suffering that I work with individuals. I should be making devices as a technician right now instead of being here. Because by doing that, I can help other people actually walk and get to church and do other things that would be, I should be paying people to work right now so we can be more efficient at helping people, yet I don't. But I can, relieve suffering. Like, I have the legal, the pastor just told me I can do that.
Yeah, above that is this. This is not order priority, okay?
Take the 7th day.
Yeah.
But a doctor can?
Yeah. No, if you work 7 days a week, ultimately you're going to experience health problems, right? You're going to experience emotional problems as well. Thomas?
Let me just listen to this completely theoretical situation. So let's say you have a mom who is a stay-at-home mom, and her job, quote unquote, is to cook for her family and provide food for them. Let's say she was out doing something with her friends on Friday, and she forgets to make a meal on Friday, the night before, and here we all go to church, and then this completely theoretical family they remember halfway through church that they don't have anything to eat after church.
Okay.
And so they decide that, okay, how about we, instead of making the mom go home early in the middle of church and make a meal so we all have something to come home to eat, how about we just go out to Aubrey's after church?
Okay.
For me, that is something that is completely okay, and actually is a very big
So,
blessing for the mom that would have to
I guess
would
you
have
don't
to
have a
work.
problem making the cook and the waitress. And
But
the
they're
people
already there.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't them, it would have to be my mom.
But
or
it
the
doesn't matter what
theoretical
sin,
mom.
it doesn't matter what sin it is. If it's already taken place, it doesn't mean that we ought to jump into it.
So I'm relieving the suffering and the work of the theoretical mom that would have to go home and make the meal. We're relieving the suffering of that person.
It's always
About
better
making somebody else work.
There you go.
You're enabling somebody else to work.
That's the key there. We have to be
Contributing.
careful about that, because it says don't work. It says in the Ten Commandments not to have your servants work.
That's right.
That's what it
Also, they
says.
invited me to eat with them. Is it
Yeah.
all right for me to go eat with them too?
Okay, I
As
think-
long as you're not
Michael,
paying.
did you have your hand up again? Okay, Michael, then we'll do
I
Sean.
think there's a difference in the relieving suffering. When you're going to get medicine to help her, because because Samantha's had migraines for years, and I know how bad those things are. They can be debilitating.
I think
To the point you cannot even come out.
I wonder why I can hear him.
Yeah.
Right, so,
You might have to
Jesus heal people like that.
Right.
I don't see anything wrong with going to get medicine.
Right.
In choosing to go to work, that's different. There's a difference between, I know you're relieving suffering right now, and everybody's thankful that you do. But there's a difference in choosing to go to work and do it, and going to get the medicine that someone desperately needs. I really do feel like there's a difference there. I think that's, I think in the whole rule business here,
by themselves.
that when there's confusion, I really believe Jesus was black. I think he came
Yeah.
here and he
What would Jesus do, right?
lived a perfect life.
Yeah. I think if we follow his example, we'll be okay there. So let's see. Did Sean, and then Sarah, and then we'll jump over to this.
So I had a question first. Didn't Ellen White write somewhere that just don't have your main source of income be working on the Sabbath? Did she say something like that?
Possibly. I don't know for
off the top
sure.
of her head.
Yeah.
And your thing, you got like your guidelines, but somebody mentioned relationship with Jesus. And, if you're a Sabbath-keeping Christian, you're trying to do your best to abide by those. There's probably some level of individual interpretation, like, Judy warms up food. Some people feel it's okay to cook food. Some people consider cooking food as very laborious and horrible. Other people find it therapeutic and enjoy it.
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
like you're supposed to have
Like mowing the grass, right?
Yeah, that's another good example, I guess.
Oh, yeah, I've had people say that to me too.
I use it like me. I don't like mowing the grass, so I have no problem. I don't care if it rains. I had 1 year I didn't mow my grass. I only mowed it 6 times. My neighbors hated it. And they were so glad my house was for sale.
Sarah?
I think it's a lot about the things about relieving suffering and having to go and buy something is more about, can it wait until the next day?
Yeah, that's a great question.
If you missed up,
Can it wait?
and you
I like
weren't
that.
able to do it on preparation day. I forget things all the time on preparation day. I have no food prepared for today, but it may not be what I want to eat that's at home that I can throw together very, very simply, but I'm going to choose to not go out and enable somebody else to work or contribute to somebody else working, so that you know, maybe it's that I go out to eat tomorrow and then I share with them the blessings of why we weren't there on our usual Saturday, and use today to remember why the other 6 days of the week that we have to, you know, relieve suffering and things. But things do happen on Sabbath that you have to.
Yeah, sometimes.
But you kind of have to ask yourself, can it wait?
Yeah.
Can we
I
can
like
it wait
that.
until tomorrow?
That's a good point. Leslie?
So, I've been listening to everybody's comments, and it's really helpful because I think this is something we've all struggled with from time to time, but what it sounds like to me is that it kind of comes down to intention. Like, are you intending to break the Sabbath on that day, or is there an emergency that comes up and can it wait kind of goes with that? And if you're convicted not to do it. So, and I think that you're right, it all comes down to your personal relationship and what you're intending to do and how you're intending to honor God.
Right. That's a great
Absolutely.
point. Okay. All right. Steve, and then we'll come to you.
The Exodus chapter 20 verse 8 also says, your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates.
Right.
You know, it's talking about when you control what you're doing.
Right.
But you're not trying to control what other people are doing outside your gates.
Right. That's a good
So
point.
when you may be trying to get legalistic when you say, I can't go to a restaurant, they're already there.
Yeah.
You know, so they're not my servant in my gate.
But doesn't
Yeah,
that
when you
kind of
left
make
the
them
gate.
within your gates? Because you're influencing?
You know, the thing about it is, if they
I know.
knew, I mean, if these people understood the truth about the Sabbath, they wouldn't be working there.
Right. It's an
That's-
opportunity to teach
Right,
them.
it's an opportunity to come to church and for us to have this type of Sabbath school discussion,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where we're, you know, because it's not a list of do's and don'ts, we all are struggling with exactly how, you know, the Bible is describing how to keep the Sabbath day holy. And I think that's why you have to remember,
Restaurants are really good stuff.
it's about relationship. It's about love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength.
Soup kitchen.
The whole purpose of keeping His commandments is because you love Him. And love is a primary a motive here, right? If you're trying to keep the Sabbath for any other motive, then it's a false religion. Okay, so Thomas?
This might be a little controversial, but previously I was talking about this theoretical family, and someone brought up there's always peanut butter sandwiches. And the problem is with that, at least for me and this theoretical family, is that you still have to make those peanut butter sandwiches the same way you'd have to make lasagna. That's still,
Whoa, bro, what
but it's still, you're still doing it, the principle still applies. And here's the other thing, is that what if this theoretical
Most of the
family,
group didn't buy into this.
what if this family, if eating peanut butter sandwiches on Sabbath ruins their Sabbath? Isn't the Sabbath made for our enjoyment?
That's what preparation day is for.
It is what- it's-
In my theoretical statement, they forgot to make it in that.
You're
Tell
right.
that family to go.
I just think we have to be careful when we think about making other people do, like even if it's outside, like you said, our gates. Because, like my cousin, she went to the synagogue, and, she was like a Sabbath keeper, and it was assignment, so she went to the synagogue. And, all these Orthodox Jewish sitting there, and they were uncomfortable with the settings of the thermostat to the air condition. So they couldn't change it because that's a sin.
Oh, really?
So they
Yeah.
asked her,
Yeah.
can you?
To me, that's legalism.
Yes, can you change,
They asked her to change.
Yeah, they asked her to change because in their mind, it's like some of other people believe, I'm not gonna sin because I cannot do that in Sabbath, but because she's not a believer, it's okay for her to sin because I guess it's not a sin
Yeah.
for her. So I guess we have to be careful with that, making others because they don't believe sin. Maybe.
Right.
Well, we
Yeah.
used to
That's a
buy
good point.
we used to buy gift cards so we could go to a restaurant on Sabbath without buying. But then till on comes the point where, oh, well, we're making these people work. So,
They were leaving
so we
suffering.
had to stop, we would stop doing that.
You're relieving the suffering of having to eat peanut
That's
butter
right.
sandwiches
They're
later.
relieving suffering.
That would be suffering.
Sometimes we can fast on the Sabbath, right? Okay, sister.
Last week I picked up off of a bulletin rack here or whatever, the display rack. And I read this book and I thank the church for providing it. It was such an open door. I was looking for a book to share with the neighbors in my migrating nomadic life right now. What can I do that would be not bashing the first day of the week?
Right.
This book was so pleasing. I stayed up till midnight.
Wow.
And I was on
Get one of those.
texting all the way to Saipan, sharing this book. So thank you to the church here.
Yeah, so we
And I
can
highly
pick up some more of
encourage
those.
anyone. There's a few more there if I don't take them all today to share with my
It says,
neighbors.
time for you.
Very good book.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right, I think we're gonna have to, see, I'm not, is that thought fast?
It's close, it's 10:33.
Okay. So the reason why I started with Revelation here is because the Sabbath is a key point in the book of Revelation at the end of time. And that's my concern here is not allowing us to be able to slip into this idea that we can compromise on these three things, right? Because that's what the mark of the beast does. It tries to get us to compromise on these three things, right?
I just want to say one thing, because I think,
Well, go ahead and say two.
all right, so there's 2 points here. One is the Sabbath was given to us by God. And that's such a gift. But also Satan wants everyone not to observe that gift. And if you do, let's distort it to a point where it's not a gift.
Right.
So he's trying so hard. If you accept the gift, let's make it a burden. Let's make this,
Like a Sunday law.
yeah, like let's either not let them enjoy this gift, or if they're observing it, and let's try to twist it to the point where you're not receiving the full benefit of it. And I think that's something that Satan is really after us.
I like that. The Sabbath is a gift to help us in our relationship with Jesus, right? It is, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, because Christ is our Creator. And the reason why it's attacked so heavily, especially here at the end of time, is because the devil doesn't want us to have our eyes on Jesus, but on something on this earth. And so, I think we've covered some principles here that you can apply in your life, and pray about it and see how God guides and directs you in your own life when it comes to keeping the Sabbath. Father in heaven, we thank you for the gift of the Sabbath. We want to take full advantage of this gift and draw closer to you. Thank you that you love us that much. In Jesus' name, amen. You know, I thought this was only